Helmut Oven. Somewhere in the desert campaigns of World War I, a soldier woke up to another blistering day under the sun. His helmet was a shiny beacon for enemy snipers, so he decided to fix that. The trick? Hold it over an open fire until the metal blackens. It works like a charm, if you wait for it to cool. He did not.
Take me away, 'cause I can be the way. Let somebody was letting go and I can have my way.
Helmet still piping hot when he shoved it on his head. The searing metal kissed his scalp, and instant sizzle. He tried to rip it off, but the chin strap got stuck, tight under his jaw, locking the helmet in place while the heat keeps spreading, blistered the skin until it bubbles and peels away in wet patches. By the time his mates cut it free, the top of his skull was an open, oozing wound, dotted with cooked scraps of meat. The rot killed him soon after. 1961 on a Navy ship. The ship is tied to the pier with massive steel cables, as thick as your wrist, coated in grease. Each one is holding thousands of pounds of force, keeping the ship from drifting. But if the ship moves suddenly, maybe from a strong tide, high winds, or the engines pushing too hard during departure, the load on the cable spikes. It snaps, hard, releasing all that stored energy in a split second, whipping across the ship at the speed of a bullet. That's what happened here. One sailor is walking across the deck when it happens. There's a loud crack, almost like a gunshot, and the cable whips free. It moves so fast it's just a blur of dark steel. You don't even have time to see it before it's already gone through you. The cable catches him mid-chest, slicing clean through muscle, bone, breath. For a heartbeat, his body stands. Then gravity does the rest. He collapsed in two, hitting the deck with a wet thud. Clearly, the rescuer couldn't CPR. There was no chest to press on. Lime Tomb. On the Western Front in 1916, the battlefield was a patchwork of mud, trenches, and shell craters. But some of those craters were made for graves, plural, filled with a chemical dust known as quicklime. Quicklime was meant to speed up the decomposition of corpses. But when it mixed with rainwater, sweat, or blood, it released heat strong enough to burn flesh. These pits were like boiling hot pot of disease. During night raids or confused retreats, soldiers sometimes stumbled into them. Some were mistaken as dead. Imagine plunging chest deep into warm, rancid water, your skin already tingling and burning where the liquid touched it. Now add the feeling of something soft and bloated, brushing against your arm. If you were wounded or carrying gear, climbing out wasn't always possible. The more you struggled, the deeper you sank, you would be sucked into mud made from meat. The stench was so thick, it coated your tongue. And if you swallowed, you risked choking on bacteria-laced slime. Some men drowned. Others stayed alive long enough to feel their skin blister and slough off in the sludge. Rescue was just as bad. Even your own comrades sometimes hesitated to pull you free because the smell made them vomit instantly on you. And by the time they did, you might already be silent. August 1919, aboard the USS New York, apprentice seaman Paul Irwin Smith was moving through the gun turret during routine work. He steps into the hatchway, one leg through, leaning forward into the next compartment. Then someone shouts an order to seal up. The heavy steel edge comes down on his lower back with the full force. A sharp, wet crack as his spine snaps in two. The impact forces the air out of his lungs in a single, choking gasp. Top half of his body collapses forward into the compartment ahead, arms still twitching. His lower half is still hanging in the hatch, legs kicking in panic. Men throw themselves on the hatch to lock it down, grinding it tighter. His torso is crushed so flat that strips of skin and tendon are the only thing holding him together. When the metal finally seals, those last strands give way. The halves of his body fall in opposite directions, one into the compartment, one into the darkness below. In some localized trench raids, especially on quiet sectors, you'd hear a man screaming out in no man's land. An enemy patrol might capture a wounded soldier. Prisoners were sometimes tied to stakes or barbed wire, deliberately left alive but badly injured, so that his cries would carry back to his comrades. The victim would hang there exposed, in pain from untreated wounds. If his own side tried to rescue him, enemy snipers would open fire, forcing them to choose between risking more lives or leaving him to die. The men in the trench had to listen for hours, sometimes more than a day, as their friend's voice turned to a hoarse rasp, then delirious muttering, and silence. It was a kind of cruelty that only worked here, in the open visibility of no man's land, where both sides could see and hear everything. In wars with faster-moving fronts, such display torture was far less common. World War II brought aircraft carriers into the center of naval warfare, and with them came a new way to die. Flight decks were busy, chaotic places, crews sprinting to get aircraft launched as fast as possible. The spinning propellers weren't just dangerous if you walked into them. At high RPM, they could pull you in from several feet away. If you were lucky, you hit the blades head-on. Death was instant, a clean red mist, nothing recognizable left. But luck wasn't the norm. Sometimes a man only caught the edge. That meant arms or legs gone in a flash, your body spun sideways into the blades, ribcage splitting open like a crate. There are reports of victims still conscious for a few impossible seconds, staring in shock at the absence where a limb had been, or gasping with a chest half gone before collapsing into the slick of blood spreading across the deck. Tethered observation balloons were used extensively for artillery spotting in World War I, far more than later wars. These hydrogen-filled balloons were prime targets for incendiary rounds from enemy aircraft. When hit, they could explode in mid-air at a single bright flash. And then the sky erupted, the sounds described as a whistle. From hundreds of meters up, darts with the size of pencils fell at terminal velocity and could pierce helmets, skulls, and even horses all the way through. Victims might be impaled through the spine, head, or torso by dozens at once. One moment you were looking up at the explosion, the next you were looking down at your own blood pumping onto the dirt through a hole the size of your thumb. It only lasted a few seconds, but for those caught underneath, it was like standing in the middle of a collapsing skyscraper made entirely of knives. By World War II, flechettes were largely replaced by different things, making mass dart impalement a distinctly World War I horror. Those were not happy days for people in those stories, but I hope you do today. See you in the next.